Kill me with Pokemon. All right, we're back. It is COMP123. It's the summer 2016 semester at Centennial. It's week 9, part 3. Last video we just kind of introduced, or the last couple of videos, introduced Windows Forms applications. And I'm going to go back to Visual Studio today. We're going to continue building more things with Windows Forms. Next week, I will be giving you the next assignment for you guys to build stuff with Windows Forms, right? So let us go back into lesson 9. I'm just going to open up lesson 9 for myself here. And we've got one form that we've already had. We've kind of built a login form, right? Just an example of how to do some simple validation, as well as designing a form. We went into a little bit of detail about how to create stuff. We looked at the properties for the actual form itself. And again, I recommend keep the properties open for both things. So if I look at the username, I can see that it's it allows us to modify each one of the controls. And so far, all we've been dealing with is a control for label and a text box control and a button. Those things. That actually gives us a lot of power. Those kinds of things, right? So okay, so we've got our little login form. Let's make another one. So how do I make a new form from scratch? That's the next thing. We've already done a login form, but I want to do another form. How do I do that? So we're going to right-click on the project, and I'm going to go Add, and I'm going to go New Item. And when it brings up the dialog box that comes up, you can choose Windows Form, right? So this is how you create new forms. You can make as many forms as possible. Let's make a calculator, right? A very simple calculator. So I'm actually going to make a real application now. A little bit more stuff in there. So change the form 1 from form 1. Let's change the name to calculator. That's going to use some of the same stuff we all know and love from C#, right? So here's our calculator. Let's start laying out the buttons. Okay. Actually, what we really need to think about is what kind of calculator are we going to make, right? Are we going to make a calculator that has scientific notations on it? I mean, what kind of stuff? And my recommendation is let's make a calculator that's a basic calculator. Add, subtract, huh? Kind of a Windows calculator, but we were going to keep it very simple. We're not going to style it too much. One thing I know that last time we learned is I don't want to shift the fonts after for each control. I want to make it for the form, right? So click on the form, and let's go back and add the same kind of fonts. So again, if you go back to the original size it was this size. And without changing the size of the form, I'm going to go to font. I'm going to click on the ellipses here. That's going to bring up the font dialog box. In the font dialog box, I'm going to get the type of font that I want. And again, I'm going to probably pick some kind of sans serif, like a Lucinda Sans. You can certainly pick whatever you want for your font. I'm still going to go to 20. Only because I want to make it big. And now you notice it becomes really big. That's okay. We can always modify the size later. This is probably going to be too big. What I want you to do is I want to mimic a calculator that's the size of a phone, right? So typically, the classic phone size would be 320 by 480, all right? So let's do that. So let's make the size of the phone, or the form, 320 by 480. Now there's two, remember we did the form size right here. And what we can do is we can go down into the width and go, 320. And then the height is 480. Now you might say, well, it's kind of restrictive. But to be honest with you, that's the size of your calculator probably on your mobile device, right? That's pretty much the size of it. If you really are somebody who's a stickler for trying to get it real, you could try and make it the same size as your actual mobile device. Like this is the old style. This is like an old iPhone 4, right? 320 by 480, right? So now this restricts us on how we're going to lay out our stuff, right? We want to make it this small. We don't want to make it too big. One thing I also want to change here is the name of the form. So login form is what we have. Calculator is what we're looking at right now. But at the top, in the text area, it says also calculator. That's good. Make sure that's correct. There's also some options about start position. Take a look. Now near the bottom, there's a thing that says start position. And it says Windows default location. Let's not do that. Let's choose a different start location. Let's talk center screen. So what does center screen mean? It means that when I run the form, if everything goes well, it's going to go pap right in the middle. Right? Uh-oh, look, my login form started, and I didn't want that one to start first. How do I start my calculator first instead of my login form? Well, remember that in my program.cs, that's my driver class. And it also talks to which form is first. And you can see that my login form right now is slated as being first. Application run login form. Let's change this so that it doesn't say application login form, it says calculator. So I'm just going to put in calculator. We have to, it's almost like we're creating a new object. So we're actually instantiating a calculator, the calculator object, inside of our program.cs class. So this is how you change which one starts first. So save, and let's run that and try that out. So the calculator is going to be first, not the login form. There it is. This is where, notice it comes right in the middle of our screen. It comes in the middle of our screen because of how we set it up. So this is where it's going to start off. All right, let's go back. So that's the first change we've made. So I'm going to go back to calculator. And let's look at some other stuff here. I'm going to go back to kill program.cs. Here's my calculator. Again, 320 by 480. Center screen is the one thing we've changed. We've also changed the font size. Background color we can change later on. If you really want to make it something like a Windows calculator, I mean, we can find the Windows calculator. This is what the Windows calculator looks like, right? This is for Windows 10, right? It's pretty large. But I'm kind of making a mini version of this, right? This kind of stuff. So I can start adding some buttons. I'm not going to add a percentage button. No memory buttons right now. Okay, so we have some kind of form, but I do want to kind of set this one up the same way. Now notice that we have a grid, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 buttons. Nice and easy, right? 20 buttons plus actual other ones. And then there's the text area that's up here, or some kind of label that's up here. And notice also that we start here, and it's going to kind of make it bigger. So if I start typing 98, notice that the numbers shift to the left. That's a little different than what we're used to. Normally, we make a text box, starts on the left and shifts to the right. So we have to kind of change our text box so that it looks right. These are all considerations when you make a UI, right? So first is, do we have a control that can lay out something in some kind of grid pattern to help us? That's the first thing you have to look at, because that would be nice. Chances are, by the way, don't feel negative if there isn't such a control, okay? Because remember, we're not going to choose one of these, but let's just suppose there isn't. So let's go look inside the. When I look at the calculator, we want to look at the toolbox. I'm going to pin the toolbox here, and if I do something like grid, right? There's two. There's a property grid. Meh, that's not what I want. Data grid view, definitely not what I want. That's a data grid, so I don't want that. Okay, so there's no grid. How about some kind of table? All right, table layout panel. Okay, that's kind of neat. How do I use the layout panel? Let's experiment. Never used this before. Let's drag and drop. Chances are it's going to need some kind of drag and drop. Whoa, whoa, there we go. We have a table layout. We're going to put this over in the bottom somewhere. And now I'm sure it has some kind of controls. And down here on the bottom, take a look. It has column count. Now remember, we're doing some kind of button similar to this thing, right? Go back to calculator. So we're going to definitely have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, regardless. How many buttons this way, we don't know yet. But for sure, 4 columns. So let's change that. Let's go back. Click on this. Again, I'm just using the table layout panel. And I'm going to change the column count to 4. So there we go, 4 columns. Okay. Whoa, okay, that's kind of weird. And let's see if we can expand this thing to kind of put it out like this. Well, how come some columns are bigger and some columns are smaller, right? All right, well, let's move this up so we can take more of our properties up, less Solution Explorer. And let's take a look at other properties that this has. Okay, so here's add a column. I can add a column. Also, some other controls here like add a row. I only have 2 rows. At the minimum, I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4 rows at the minimum, not including the C and CE buttons. Maybe 5 rows, because I'm definitely going to need a divider divide, multiply mine. I'm not going to handle these ones right now. So 5 rows, you know, by 4 columns, and that's why I said 20 buttons, right? So 5 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 rows. 2 more rows. I'm gonna add more rows here, and this thing. And you might say, well, Tom, why don't you just add the buttons randomly? Yeah, you could do that too. You could just add the buttons by hand. It's not. I'm not gonna. You know, I wouldn't say that's a completely wrong thing to do. But I'm gonna add some rows. I'm gonna add a row. Okay, that's good. Let's make this column stretch all the way like this. I'm gonna add another row. Right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 rows. Okay. Okay, some of the rows seem to be a little bit weird, right? And this is my size, 280 by 239. It's going to fit inside my my space. That's one thing to know. Here's table layout panel 1. All right, table layout panel 1. Let's just call this thing the table layout panel. So let's rename this so table layout panel if we have to. The panel is, chances are, it's a container. It's a container of stuff. So my column count, my columns. If I look at the collection of columns, if I click onto the collection, I can see that I have column 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I have percentages, right? Percentages. I don't want to use percentages. That makes no sense. Well, I could, but I want to make that all these percentages of the columns are equal. If I have 4 columns, each percentage should be 25%. Make it equal, right? So let's try that. So we're going to go to 25%. We're going to go to this one, 25%. Look at this one, 25%. And when I click OK, I'm not going to use auto size. That's definitely not going to happen, right? So 25%. Yay. And you can see that this is the columns that I have, right? Also, I can choose rows, right? So let's go rows. And you can see it's the same kind of situation here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. 100 divided by 5, 20. So I got 20%. So 20%. 20%. These are percentages, 20. And you know, this is not, it's not like it's going to surprise you what we're doing here, right? We're going to try and use this layout. Okay, now that I've got columns and rows, you can see that these are the 2 things I have access to up here, right? I can press OK. When I do, I have an equal amount of rows and columns. This is nice, right? Why? These are like, I want you to use these as guides. They're not going to stop us from doing what we're doing, but they provide a nice grid for us to start designing our form, as opposed to some random way of doing it. We have our button sizes too. I don't have to guess of what my buttons are going to be like. I have everything that I want to do. I just have to, all I have to do is drag a button and make the button fit inside each of these things. So I'm going to make 20 buttons, not 1, 20. All right, let's try this out in this particular time. Again, I'm going to go, instead of all Windows forms, I'm going to go to common windows for buttons. Let's just collapse all these. I don't need them all. There we go. If you want to, you can also search for button on the top there. All right, and I'm just going to drag a button, and I'm going to start to the top left corner here, inside the actual thing itself. Notice that it conforms nicely to the area, and I can't make it any bigger or any taller or anything like this. Well, I only want to make one button first. Why? When I make my first button, I can copy it and make all the other buttons, right? This is the real exciting stuff we're doing here for the calculator. Let's take a look. So if the first button, if we follow the pattern, this should be some kind of clear. Let's leave the C and C. We'll just make it a C for clear, okay? Don't worry about C and C. And same thing with this one. We might leave these 2 buttons blank for now. May not even have those 2 buttons in place. Or maybe we want to redesign it so the C is here and these 2 buttons are blank, right? However you want it, we have to put some kind of button with a C on it. So let's rename the button. First of all, our text should be C, right? That's where the text should be. It becomes right in the middle of the button here. And also, what we want to do is we want to make sure that this has the proper label. Why? This is super important, because my clear button is going to have a specific function, right? Okay, let's do this. So we'll say here, we'll change the button type to clear button. Right, there we go. And now I want to copy this button, right? Or I can make other ones. But let's say if I copy it, so Control C, if I go Control V, here's my other one. Whoop, goes into the next space. That's how beautiful the grid is, right? And let's copy it again. Control V. Oh, Control V. Wait, Control V, 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 V. Blah, 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 blah. Nice and easy, and beautiful, by the way, right? That makes it nice and easy to make buttons. Okay, obviously they're not all going to be the clear button. In fact, like I said, we have to decide what all these buttons are without changing the names yet, because we want to make sure we have the right alignment. Again, using this calculator as a guide, I know that this is going to be 789, 456, 1, 2, 3, and 0, right? So I want to do that. So this is 789. So let's do this. So I'm going to kind of, if you double click in here, it'll do the button control, right? And remember that that's not what you want to do, right? You want to make sure that the click event, and that's how you erase the click event again, is gone. Right? You don't want any kind of click event yet. You do, however, want to change the text of the button. So make sure you kind of scroll down to where the text of the button is and change this button, the text to 7. Then click the next one and change the button to 8. Right? There is no quick way to do this, to be honest with you. This is 9. Work with me, guys, or else you won't finish. All right, and now we have to look at the other design. So 789. So 456. This is 4. Oh, 4. Let's undo that one. 4. 5. Now, this might not be, particularly interesting, but I'll tell you that one of the applications that we always build when we're doing mobile applications, one of the first ones is make a calculator. Why? It's kind of, in my opinion, it's one of the, it's almost like the hello world application that we make for all mobile devices. I would start off and say, hey, let's make a calculator, simple calculator. You might think this is actually an easy task, but no, it's not. And we'll talk about why it's not in a second. All right, what's this button going to be? Let's take a look. Should be plus or minus. That means that it'll take on a negative or a minus. It'll switch things from minus to negative. Let's leave that button away. So I'm going to remove the button. So I'm going to press delete. Okay, I want to press delete. Delete the button. That's gone. Right, you can see that there's no button there for that. Okay, good. Here's the 0. We know that that's going to be the 0 button. So I'm going to go back down here. And again, all I'm doing is just changing the actual text. We're going to go back and rename everything later. Okay, this one. What's this button? Okay, a dot. Definitely need that one. If I want to do any kind of calculations that give me a point calculation, need that one. So let's leave that in place. So I'm going to go back, change this, and change this text to a dot, or the period. Right, there we go. And now this one. That's pretty much the most important one, the equal sign. We may want to change our equal sign so it's a different color. For now, though, we're going to make it so that it's still the same color and just change the text so it says equals. There we go. All right. Now, on the way up, we do plus, minus, times, divide. Okay. The divide is going to be funny. Plus. That's not what I wanted. Plus, minus, times, uh-oh. What do I use for my divide, peoples of the world? Can I use something like that? Can I use a slash? I have to use a slash. There is no divide, image that I can use. I don't have one. So right now for our divide, we're going to use a slash. So divide, right? Like a real computer calculator, right? We can think about what the slash is going to look like later. Can I get an image for the divide? Probably, right? For now, it's just going to be text. Okay, good. So we've got our little button. Now, what about these buttons here? What are we doing with those? So again, we talked about this. Do I want to put my C here like it shows it here? This is a backspace button. So it actually allows me to erase the last digit. Some kind of backspace button, eh? Like I don't know what to do there. So do we need a backspace for my button? Yeah. I could probably press delete on the like we're going to actually use this. So if I type it in, like the buttons on my calculator, I won't be able to. I don't want you to be able to go into the text box. This is what I'm not going to let you to do. Go into the text box and actually type in there. It'll be locked. The only way you can type your buttons is through the calculator, right? That makes more sense. So likewise, if I press the delete button, I won't be able to do that, right? So I need some kind of backspace button. That's why it's here, because if I type in here, see that I can't put a number in here. I can't, do this. That's why it has this, so I can go back and kind of delete the digits. All right. So I need a delete button, so I need to put that in. But what symbol is what I'm saying? What symbol am I going to use? Because I don't have a symbol right now for that. What do I use for that? And I guess we can make an arrow, so I can kind of go down in here for now. And we're gonna replace these later on in our better functions. If I'm gonna do one of those, okay, delete, right? This will be our C. This will be our clear button, right? When it kind of updates in a second. And this one we can delete. So we're going to just go delete. That's our button. Now we have a couple of empty spaces. That's okay. Don't worry about those things. We have these things. And if I was to run this thing just the way it is right now, just to test it, and this is good practice, you can see that I can kind of touch each of these buttons. There's no buttons there. It'll totally work, right? And I can test my calculator out. One thing I don't want, here's what I don't want. I don't want this. So my form should not do this. I shouldn't be allowed to do that on my form, okay? And I definitely shouldn't be allowed to do this, right? So those things on the form have to stop. That's a form thing because I'm affecting the form. That's not a button thing. So I need to click on the form itself to find that control type. All right. So let's take a look. So yes. Git? Yeah, I will in a second. So let's take a look. So here's my back color. My cancel button, I don't have one of those yet. I'm not going to have, here's my control box. What is my control box? My control box, if I turn this to false, right, it'll take these away. So it won't allow me to minimize or maximize or anything like that. That's one thing it'll stop. So I don't want to take that away because maybe I want to minimize my stuff once in a while. So leave my control box as true. Enabled as true. Let's keep going down. Form border style, I'll leave it the same. Sizable. So you see, I can take that away. So sizable is the style of the form around what it looks like. Fixed 3D, there's what fixed 3D looks like. I'm not happy with that, right? I can also go fixed single, kind of make it like that, look like this, right? This is just the style of the border that goes around things. Fixed dialog, right, if you want to do that. And then we had it fixed to a window, right? So there's like a little X. So it takes away. Every time we decide something, make a decision, you can see when I run this thing now, there is no more resize. I can't minimize. I can only stop, right? It's not exactly what I like. It's nice, not enough for this particular thing, right? So form border style gives us a little bit of choices of what to do. Sizable tool window, right? And going back, I want to go back to, if I go to fixed dialog for a second. So fixed dialog. This is a different thing too. If I press play on fixed dialog, and I try and resize, take a look. Try resizing everything. See how I can't resize? I can maximize, I can do one of these, that's bad, right? And I can minimize, right? But I can't resize. So that's one thing we've taken care of the resizing piece. So fixed dialog by using that. Let's keep going. Key preview language is default. Localizable is false. This is where I want to use localized text, localizable. Lock, no. Main menu strip, right? I can add that in if I want. Maximize box is false. Let's turn that off. Bam, no more maximize box, right? Maximum size, I can go that. Minimize box, I definitely want that, right? And I definitely want to restore box. Those two things got to be there, or else I can't restore my form back to what it was, right? Okay, right to left, not yet. We'll think about this for a second. Show icon is true. That's the icon on the top left corner. If I want to take the icon off, I can make it so it's false. Let's see what that does, right? Show in taskbar, true. That means it'll show up down here in the taskbar, right? So these are all the things that are part of our form. Size, grip style, auto. For example, I can say hide. If I want to hide the grip style altogether so you can't grip the form whatsoever. I'll leave it at auto for now. Topmost, false. Topmost means it'll layer on top of everything else. So you can't lose the actual window. It'll always be on top, right? For now, let's leave that as is. Use weight cursor, no. And Windows state, the other options for Windows state is minimize or maximize when it starts off. We want to leave that as default, which is normal, right? That means you can start off a form fully maximized, right, as opposed to, you know, something that's minimized or whatever. Let's try this out now. So we've messed with our form a little bit, right? And I can't notice I can't do this. I can do this, and I can go back, right? There is no, I don't have an icon on the top left corner anymore. I've taken that away, so I don't want it, right? And it just says calculator. You guys should be able to do this too. Are you with me? Because we're going to continue from here. This is just the beginning, right? Okay, let's stop this. And just for someone asked, I'm going to put this up on GitHub. So I'm going to go to Team Explorer. And I'm going to go to changes. And notice that I've added a new calculator project. That's what it is. So added calculator project, right? And I'll say commit all. And I'm going to go to home. I'm going to go to sync. And we're going to push. So what have we learned? Just a recap. We know that the grid is pretty cool, right? The grid allows us more control from a layout perspective, and it's invisible. Can't see it, right? That's a really good thing. Here's what we need to do now. We need to do some hard work. I need to realign all these buttons so that they have a real name. So again, we call this the clear button. Let's go back and just change the names of the buttons. So clear button. And bear with me while I do this. This is the back button. Back button. This is the divide button. You do it with me. Divide button. I'm going to start labeling everything. This is the 7 button. Now remember, can I start with the, a variable with a, you know, the number 7? Is that allowable in C#? Come on, guys and girls. Is it allowable to start a variable with the number 7? I can do, and I can start with an alpha character, but I can't start off with a number. I can't do 7 as a label, but I can do button 7. Let's do that. So we'll say button 7. Right now, the reason this is good. Now it says property value not valid. Here, so let me show you why. Because there's already something that says button 7 somewhere. Right? Let's see where that is. 113. Betcha for sure. Button 8. Button 6. Button 5. Oh, maybe button 7 will be here. This would be the times button. So times button. Let's change the ones we can see. This is divide times. This is the minus button. Change some of those buttons first, and then we'll go back to the buttons in a second. This is the plus button. Plus button. Equals button. Equals button. Why do I have to do this? If I don't do these things, well then, you know, you can't access them back in the code, right? You need to be able to label them so they're accessible. Okay, now let's go back to this. This is button 7. Yes, this is button 8. Hopefully that'll work. And we may have to start off, yeah, we may have to start off down here because that might, this is button 0. Button 0. I could also use the names like 0 button, the actual name of the button. 0 button, 7 button. Maybe that's what I'll do. So instead of making the number, I'll do the 7 button. That one of those. That's unique for sure. This will be the 8 button. A little long, but who cares? 9 button. This will be the 4 button. 5 button. I know it's like watching paint peel, guys. I'm so sorry, but this is what we need to do when we make buttons. 6 button. Just you go ahead and do yours so they match with mine. 1 button. Okay. These are kind of funny, these lower ones. Somehow they seem a little smaller to me. Maybe I messed up. This is the period button, or a decimal button. Here we go. These ones seem a little bit off. I guess they got shifted a little bit. This is the equals button. Okay, good. So I've got all these buttons. Just to make sure that they're all the same, the right size, I'm just going to expand them so they're all the same. All right. If I click away, I've got buttons, I've got sizes. Let's make the equals button green, a green button on the back. So when I kind of click on this, right, it'll make it a little different color, make it more interesting for us. So how do I do that? The back color of the controller is right here for the button, back color. And I can choose an array of colors. We haven't done this yet. But we can choose one that makes sense. So I'm going to go to Web, Colors, and I can choose one that is somewhat nice. I don't make it too green. The spring green, pale green, lime green. How about just green? Might be too dark, huh? Well, it doesn't matter, because even if it's dark and you can't see the text, this is okay. I can certainly change the fore color, which is my foreground color, instead of black, right? I can turn it to white. So I can go back, I can choose one that's here, or I can go Web Colors and I can go white, right? So you can see that the contrast I can see. When we make controls in any UI, all right, it doesn't matter if we're doing it for this little example here, or if you're doing it for any kind of mobile device, right, or whatever. Always make sure that you can see your text, okay? If your contrast is off, even if the text is, awesome the way you've done it, you can't see what you're typing, that's a bad thing. For the C, I think I want to make this so that it's a different color too, so the clear button has a different color. Let's make the clear button, let's say blue or something like that. Okay, so it's just to practice colors of objects. I'm going to go here, and we'll go to Web here again. Instead of green, I'm going to choose blue. Again, it might be dark, and if it is, that's fine. I'm okay with it being dark. All I want to do, by the way, instead of me picking it like this, what's the other way I could do it? I could just type in blue. And if it's something that it knows, it'll work. Fore color has to change on this one too, right? So it has to go to white. Let's type it this time and see if I'm right. If I go white, it does work, right? I can type it in here, and I can also pull it down. As long as it matches one of the colors, I'm good. Now, again, it looks like this. This is what my calculator looks like. I can see that this is the C button. This is the equals button, okay? And now I need some kind of control where the details are going to be up here somewhere, right? Chances are you may want to put it up here. Why up here and not in here? Well, if I want to add more buttons, I may want to add them in here. A couple more rows will bring it up to here. So I only have up to here to do for my control. So I want to put a text box or some kind of control that shows stuff, right? Label, I don't recommend. I'll tell you why. Label is only for display, and it has less events and all that kind of stuff than a text box. We want to make the text box so that it is inaccessible. You can't click into it. Almost like it's disabled, right? But it's not. We don't want to make it look like it's disabled. So let's do that. Okay, so this is going to be the result text box, right, that we want, right? So I want to kind of look at text box, and we can also look at other kind of controls if you think about some other controls here as well. I mean, I don't recommend label or link label or anything like that. It's got to be something like a text box which you can tie in here. All right, here's my issue. We have to make it so that it's aligned with this part right here, right? There we are. There's my text box. Okay, so this text box by default, notice that it aligns nicely. I want to align it to the top. See how I have these two alignment bars up here, right? This is good. But by default, I get my text started on this side. That's wrong. So I want to start my text over on this side, right? So before we make this text locked up and everything else, we want to make sure that it can handle our text size, right? So if you look at first of all, my text box is going to be the result text box. Result text box. That's where everything is going to go, all the results of our calculations, right? Notice in the example calculator, we have a very big text box here. So how could I emulate this if I really want to make it so it's much bigger? Well, I can increase the font size. Once I increase the font size, text box increases size. Let's try this out. So we don't have to make it totally big, but let's go from Lucinda 20, which would I have, right, from 20. Let's go to something like, I don't know, 24 and test that. Not much bigger. Let's keep going. Well, maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe something like 30 or 40. That's about 36. Let's try that. That's a little better. So a bigger text box. So that's about 36. Looks nicer too, right? All right. let's test out the text box and see what happens. So if I test it out and see if I type in something in there right now, like 0, it's like this big, right? That's cool, but I want it so it goes this way, right? I don't want it to expand this way, right? Ooh, see, that's the other reason why I don't want text box like this. If I can type in there, that means I can type a non-numeric character, which will error out for me. And you're going to see what we're going to do later on. So I'll stop this. So how do I change it from, instead of left to right, I want to go right to left. So I'm going to go down here, look, right to left. Let's change this to yes. Okay, let's try it out again. So right to left. Is this the behavior we want? So no, this is right? This is the behavior, right to left. We type in an object and it goes in there, right? So 455.0, uh-oh, that was weird. And then, you know, plus 35, right? So it kind of looks weird like that. Just once you put the plus in and you enter it, it changes everything. It adds the, you know, the details in there, right? We're not going to do it that way, of course, right? But what we're going to do is we're going to start typing in here. Also notice we have a limited amount of digits we can put in here based on the size of my little text box, right? The bigger the digit, the wider they are, right? And we have to kind of deal with that. We may have to go outside of the text box. So if I go keep typing, you can see that it's going to be one of those to a limit, right? Here's another thing we want to kind of be really clear about. Our text box, the details that's in there when I start calculating, right? When I convert it, I need to convert my text, the stuff that's going to go in there, right? It's going to go from a string. We're going to build up a string. This is the strategy, right? When I click on my buttons, it's going to change my string to whatever it is in there to whatever I put in there, okay? Think about this now. For all the buttons. So if I go 789, whatever it is going to be, once I do 789 blah blah, it's going to put in the number, right? I can put whatever numbers, however many numbers I want in the text box, right? I can't put a second period in. If I put the first period in, my period would be locked. I can't put a period in again once I put the period in the first time. I have to be able to keep track of that. So if I put a period, another period in there, like see the complexities here? I can mess up the calculator because it's gonna, I already got my period in place, or it's gonna error out. Okay, so that's the one thing. So I can't put my period in twice, only once to show the decimal point where it's gonna be. Okay, the other thing is, when I backspace, I gotta delete the last one that's in here, all right? So this is the behavior that I want. Delete the last one, not the first one, delete the last one from this thing. So I'm going to chop off, right? I'm going to chop off the last digit altogether every single time, right? Truncate is what it's called. I'm going to truncate the last digit, whatever it is, off every single time, right? That's the behavior I want. Here's the other thing. When I click one of these control buttons, these are special control buttons here, right? When I click one of these control buttons, right? And we should probably, you know, for these control buttons, we should probably make them all the same color, like maybe blue. Make all these control buttons blue to kind of make our you know, the user understand that these are different buttons than these buttons, right? Now again, this is a design choice. You could certainly say, I don't want blue. I want another color, and you can make it whatever color you want. I'm going to make it blue because that's what I want. So I'm going to select more than one button at the same time. Let's see if I can do this. So button, 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 button. I'm just shift clicking. Please, guys, don't watch me. Do it, right? This will be easier for you when you're on an exam and ask you to build something on an exam. That would be really bad if you didn't know how to do it properly. You haven't practiced enough. All right. The back color for the control is not going to be control. I'm just going to type in the word blue, right? And I can do that all at once. I can also do the fore color. I can just type in the fore color as white. You can see that it all gets set up as fast as possible. So from a rapid application development, you can see that I can make a form that looks just like what I want. Yes?
Yeah.
In here?
Yeah.
That's weird. That you can't input the numbers. You should. Text boxes can take whatever number you put in there, whatever you want, right? Here's what we don't want to do, though. The text box we want to start off as locked or disabled, right? Now, there's some problems with this. Here's something. If I click locked, if I put the text box as locked, true, and let's say now, what does locked mean? Be careful what it means. Locked does not mean I can't type in there. Here's what it does not mean, okay? Locked is a special technique we use to lock down the UI, not lock down what's in the text box. That's disabled, right? I'll show you. I can still do this, no problem, right, with the text box, even though it's locked. Locked, what it does is if I highlight everything like this, so let's say I highlight what I want. These are all the controls. And if I go down here, these are all just for the actual layout itself. I can go and say locked is true. When I start as I'm locking down the layout. Okay, now that I've locked down the layout, I can't click on it anymore, right? But I can click on these controls. So let's kind of click on all these controls now, and I want to lock them. Locking is a good strategy because by accident I won't necessarily click and drag these controls, and I'm going to be working with these controls a lot anywhere away, right? So let's just lock all these controls. I'm going to go here to lock them all. I'm locking my layout is what I'm really doing. Okay, I'm locking my layout. So I can't do one of these. Watch, if I drag the control now, even if I want to, I can't. This is a safety feature for us, right? When we're doing design, right? Locked. But what I really meant to do here up here is not lock the text box necessarily. I want to disable the text box. But the problem with disabling the text box is it changes our color scheme. I still want it to look like a white box, right? So let's do this. So enabled is going to be false. Let's try this out. See how it'll darken it. If I run this thing now and runtime, it'll look dark. That's not what I want for a text box. I want the background to specifically be white, and I want the border to be a border that looks like this. Right? I have to specify these things, right? Here's my back color. Notice that it's the control color. I want to change my back color to white, even though it looks white. Who cares? Back color is now white. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Undo. Meant for this box. Right? So my back color, instead of window, it's going to be white. That's important. Okay? Border style, instead of fixed 3D, right? Again, I can make it fixed single. Right? I'm specifying. I'm specifying the border color. Now, if I run it, it should not be grayed out, even though I can't do anything in there. This is just a technique we use to change the back color so it looks like a text box, right? All right, so we've kind of set up our calculator. Nice, nice, nice. Let's go and do another commit, right? Because I think it's a good opportunity for us to commit our changes. So hope changes, and I'll say, notice that I've just changed these resources in the calculator.designer.cs, and I'm going to say, updated UI design of calculator. There we go. Commit all, home, and I'm going to go sync and push. That's going to push our form out. So again, it looks like a calculator. It's because, but it doesn't do anything right now. Okay. I want to ask you guys, do you think this is going to be easy to do? Think about it, what I'm doing, right? So what I'm actually saying is this. I got my text box, and I'm going to add in, I'm going to click on a button, and the button's going to modify my text box to add in a value, right? The value is going to be a string. So every time I take a look, if I touch my text box, what I want to do is change the text of the text box by adding in, concatenating my number that I originally have in there with whatever I type. So let's just do that at first. And here's the other thing. When I click on the button, right, I can have, right now I'm going to have like, 10 events for the button. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And 0, 10. 10 different button events. This is the really bad way of doing it, right? Wouldn't it be nice as if I could click on the event, and I know I can use a switch statement in one event, a shared event, right? Instead of a event that's already instead of having the multiple events, I can use the same event, right? A shared event to kind of decide, and depending on which button I'm choosing, right? Which button I'm choosing, the name of the button or whatever, I can go through and then use the same event to kind of modify my buttons. How do I do that? Yes.
Yeah, I just literally got your GitHub and
Well, text. I just locked it. Right. So the text box definitely wouldn't work. Right. Not yet. You'll see. All right. So let's try this out. So first of all, there's two ways to do this. I could create an event handler like we've already done, right? But what I want to click is I want to create my own method called, you know, some kind of like event handler method that I want to name. Like for example, my calculator button click event, calculator button click, not my 7 button click or 8 button click or 9 button click, but my calculator button click. Let's try this. All right. So how do I do that? Well, we could use a pattern. So let's use the 7 as the pattern. So I'm just going to double click on the 7. It's going to create a pattern for us. We don't need this anymore. That it gives me what it's going to look like. It's going to look like this: private 7 button click, blah blah blah. Can I? I'm just asking. Can I rename this without breaking my, without breaking my design? Can I do that? First of all, well, I right click and can I do rename? Right? Renaming is better this way than doing it by hand. If I do it by hand, it'll break my code, right? And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So let's name this thing. I still want the click name, right? But I want to rename this thing calculator button click. So calculator, button underscore click, right? And then press apply. Whoa, let's see if what happened here. Did it break my control? If I click on here, if I normally modify it, it's gone. It's broken. Design wouldn't be set. Oh, we're good. We're still good, right? Why? Because even on the back end, when I rename it, because it's a partial class, even on the other side, the design side, it's going to rename it there too, right? Because I'm renaming it according to like a refactoring rename, as opposed to me just physically renaming or deleting, right? I don't want that. So calculator buttons clicks when we call it. I have a sender object, and I have it for the 7. Can I somehow point my other ones to this one as well? Let's click on the 8, okay? Now, this is something that I want you to be very careful when you see this, right? Click on the little lightning bolt. And notice I have my click event, and I can select an event that already is existing, like this one. So let's do that for the rest. And instead of me typing 1, let's just select them all. So this one, 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 and this one for now. Now for the dot, we'll leave out, okay? And can I pull down one event to share them all? And the answer is yeah, I can. So each event, each button, right, will now point to the, the single calculator button click event. Right? Does that make sense?
Still back for the 7, you didn't do refactoring.
I did. Yeah, that's the one I refactored. So I made that one the calculator button click event.
Oh.
Right? I just kept the same style. Okay, good. So now I've done that. Let's save everything. I'm going to go back to here and notice that nothing's changed on this side. Right? Because, of course, nothing is going to change here. I'm using a shared event handler. I'm pointing my buttons at one event. By the way, hint, hint, Android, iOS, and this stuff here, all the same when it comes to this kind of stuff. I can point to the same event. I don't have to declare different events for different buttons if I don't want to. Now, the challenge is, how do I know what the sender object is? So let's try this out. So if I go here, and if I go sender, because the sender object is what I click on. All right, that's what I'm trying to think of. If I go sender dot, and I go, well, there's not toString. I could do toString, right? So let's go toString for a second. Sender dot toString, and then this is going to return a string. But I want to do a debug dot WriteLine, right? My sender object toString to the line. Remember, debug is not existing in this particular context. I only put it in the other project. How do we get that back? How do I add it so that the debug works? I can use a using statement if you know what the using statement is, or if you double click on just the debug part and press Control and period, right? It'll make a suggestion of a using statement that might work if it knows the class. So I'm going to do that and then press Enter. It's going to load this using system.diagnostics, right? So it's going to send this out, whatever the sender object is, to the output window. Let's check this out. So run. And notice here's the output window down here, right? I'm going to kind of move this over here so you can see it. And if I click 7, right, it says, look, system.windows forms button text 7. Forms button. That's pretty good. System.windows forms.button text 7. Let's do the other one. 8. 9. It already knows which one I'm clicking on, right? because depending on what I'm clicking on, it has this idea for what the text is. Now, this is interesting. So system.windows.forms.button.text.7. Text is equal to 7. That's what the actual the return is, right? So whatever my sender is. Okay, let's stop this for a second. Let's do the same thing, but instead of returning toString, instead of doing toString, right? How about, here's my sender object. What about my event, my event args? This, the event. Can I do something with this instead? Can I go e dot, then toString, and see what I get when I click on these buttons, right? So I'm changing taking the e, the event argument. Here's the sender argument. We know what we get with that. We know now we're going to see what we get with this, right? Guys, I'm showing you this stuff because this is the keys to understand how any UI system will work. So run. Okay, so let's put this to the side again, and then look down here, and I will click 7. Okay, system.windows forms a mouse event args. It just tells you the type of event, a mouse event. This doesn't tell you anything that we want. So it's not that event that we want to do. Yes.
I just want to know how you point all the other buttons to 7.
Sure. So how did I point it is the question. So remember that there's these tabs inside the properties. One of them is this one, which tells me the properties. This lightning bolt itself, right? The lightning bolt itself is just the events. Now I can highlight one button and tell me what the event is, or I can highlight them all. And I can pull down the same event. You can see that the calculator button click is the same event. I can pull down an event instead of this side, right? I can say this one. And when I do that, anything that I've highlighted points to that event.
Oh, so you click on the 7 and you highlight everything?
Well, it wouldn't be the 7. It would be whatever one I created, right? So first what I did was I used the 7 as just a template, right? I double clicked on there, and I've got the event handler. Then I renamed it so that it doesn't say 7 button click event. It's going to say calculator button click event. So it makes sense for our context, right? So we can read our code and go, okay, that calculates all the buttons, right? All right, now how do I do a switch statement? This is the challenge, and then we'll take a break after this. How do I do a switch statement to switch the sender object? So if it's the 7, right? Case whatever the thing is a 7, right? Sender dot something, right? That's the most important thing, right? So again, if I do a switch statement, and if I switch the sender object, right? I got to be very careful because it's an object, right? And here I'm going to do one of these, and take a look what it says. It says a switch expression or case label must be a bool, character, string, integral, enum, or corresponding a nullable type. So I can't use just the sender object itself. I could use the toString object, but then I'm looking for that long toString, right? And I want to get the name, almost like the name of the button, right? So again, if you don't know how to do it, so you can look it up. Name of control from sender object C#. By the way, VB also does the same thing, right? Here it goes. So determine the sender of an event without using the control. Okay, how do we do that? This is important because it tells us information about it. All right, so this is with using VB. Yay! This is C#. Okay, so if sender is equal to button 1, oh man, is that all we have to do? Huh? Sender is equal to button 1. All right, well that's cool if sender is equal to button 1. How do we do this? So if you do, I can do an if else, right? But I want to kind of make it so that the sender object itself is switched, right? So is there a way of using a switch statement instead of a if else? Because switch is kind of a little better, right? But this would work. So the sender object can actually point to an actual button, which is cool, right? That's nice and easy. Worst case, we're going to do an if else, right? I want to make it so we can do a switch statement, right? Okay, cool. So name of control from sender. So switch statement, switch sender object, C#. So important to understand, again, I talked about this before, right? I want you to think about this as this. When we kind of Google something, all right, I want you guys to be good Googlers, right? Think about what we have to know what we're Googling, right? And this is what I'm also showing you here. So switch case of event archetypes, right? And there's some good stuff that goes in there that tells you how to do it. So the switch statement C, this is event args. Yeah, but that's the event arguments. If is it a mouse event or whatever? That doesn't really take care of it for us. Okay. Switch case of switch and get type to determine an object, the object type. So get type. Okay, that's neat. So no.get type. Okay, that's cool. So get type is the type of object that we're getting. Get type. That makes me. Get type is a built-in object. It's part of all objects. Remember, we never did this before, right? Get type is the one we want, right? Okay. So let's go back. So we're going to test this out because switch doesn't work for us. So we're going to put this back for a second, and we're going to say so debug dot write line. So we're going to test this out, and we're going to say sender one day cycle sender.getType is what I want to put in there. So I'm going to take the type of the sender object and see what I get then. I want to be able to do that, and if I can convert it to string, I got what I need. Because then as long as I know what the type is, I can switch the type. So let's try this out here. So sender.getType. That's built in. GetType is a built-in value, right? And I want to print this out. So this is what I'm kind of outputting. Let's try this out. So save. I'm going to run this thing. And now I'm going to kind of put it over here and click the button. OK, it's a button. All right. That's good. Well, what if, can I cast the sender object? You know what casting is? Who knows what casting is? Please put your hand up if you know what casting. Casting means convert. But casting also means I want to take that sender object and I want to make it into a button. I want to almost like say that this button, the sender object itself, I want to make a new button, whatever the button is that I type, and whatever the button that I'm getting that I'm from the sender object, I want to be able to cast it, right? I want to be able to cast it. Can I do that? So I can say, well, cast this sender object as the type that's the button itself. So instead of it is a button, but I want to convert it, right? Well. If that's true, can I continue the chain? Can I go get type? And what else can I do with get type? Can I look at is class, is nested, toString? I can do that. Name, the name of the button, the name of the type. Let's see if I can do that. So that's the name property. I'm kind of building this out with you guys, right? So you can see what my thinking is, right? So you can figure this out if you wanted to figure it out on your own, right? Because otherwise, you don't know what can be done, and that's why it's button. Okay, button doesn't do anything for me, right? It's a button, yay! But what type of button? What is the text of the button, right? How do I get the text of the button, right? All right. So this isn't any good. How about if I cast it as a button? So if I say something like button, so I'm going to put brackets and then button. This is normally casting syntax. So I'm saying the sender is a button, right? And if the sender is a button, then I want to get the text of the button, right? Well, that doesn't do it either, right? That doesn't do it for me. Okay. I'm just putting it out there for you guys so you can see this how this is done, right? How about if I make a new button? I made a button, but I know it's a button class. And because I'm making a button, I can make a button object, right? Okay, so how do I do that? Well, I can say button. That's the class, text button or whatever it's going to be, right? My button, and I'm going to call this the button clicked. That's the button name, button clicked, right? Is equal to sender. Sorry, I'm going to cast sender as a button. Woo! Why? This way I don't have to use the new syntax. I don't have to make a new button. I'm actually saying this button is a reference to the sender object that's a button already. We know it's a button. Let's kick it. And I'm making it, I'm converting it, so I'm changing it just from a regular object into a button, which means this button clicked event, a button click object, is going to have all the things that I want. Here's the thing that I can do, right? If I do this, then I most likely can do one of these, debug, write line. I can put in there something like this, button clicked dot text, right? And if I do that, my friends, I don't even have to do a switch statement at all. Let's take a look. So I'm taking my button click, I'm declaring a new object called button clicked, right? My button click is, I'm making a reference to the actual button that's actually clicked, and I'm converting whatever this object was. I'm saying that I'm telling C# that it is a button. I know personally, I'm saying, trust me, C#, it's a button, right? C# doesn't know what it is right now, but I'm telling C# it is a button. When I tell it's a button, I can assign the value of this and make a reference to the actual button that's being clicked. Okay, now that I've got that, I can do something like this. Take the button and the text, the buttons have text properties, right? So I can say, give me the text property of that button. What I'm hoping to do is when I click on the button and test this out, I'm gonna get 7, 8, 9, and I never have to do a switch statement at all. That's the right way to do it. Cool. And if I do that, what I wanna do is I wanna go to the actual result text box and change the text of the result text box to whatever button I click, or concat, add on to the result text box whatever button I click. Okay, let's try this out. So first, let's see if I get what I want, because I'm going to do step by step right here, right? So save, run, go over here, and then I click on the 7 button. 7. Yeah, I'm at 8, 9. Right? I get all the buttons right there. Once I got that, guys and girls, there's no if statement at all. I'm ready to go. This is way more efficient than any kind of if else. That would be really ugly if I did the if else statement. So I already have the information. The sender button, the sender object knows what the button is. I just need to decipher it, and that's what I've done. All right, so let's just put some context in there for you guys when you're going to watch the video or try this later on, or look at the stuff online, because I'm going to test you guys on this later on, right? Not now, but on an exam somewhere, right? Hint, hint, right? And so this is create a reference, is what I'm doing, to the sender object. And tell C# that it is a button. That's what I'm doing. I'm telling it, I'm specifying that it's a button, all right? And this piece down here, this right line, I'm just checking what it is. Now that I know this, here's the next piece. I know that I have a result text box. I'll take a short break after this. And I want to concatenate the text, whatever the text item is. I want to read what's already in there in the text box, and I want to add to it right now with whatever I'm typing in. Okay, let's try this out. So I'm going to say, let's make a string, because that's what it's going to be. My string is going to be current result. Okay, here's my current result, which is going to be equal to the result text box dot text. Okay, so I'm taking whatever's in the text box. So read the string in the text box. Okay. And once I get the string from the text box, I'm going to assign it what I just typed, right? So how do I do that? It's going to be current result plus equals, because remember, I can concatenate with whatever I assign in there. It'll just add it to the end, plus equals of my button clicked dot text. Okay, now that's just on my current result. Now I got to take the current result and put it back on. I got to reset whatever the text box had in it to my current result. Right, so this is where I'm getting it first from here. I'm storing it temporarily. I'm adding whatever I click in there onto it, and then I'm putting it back. Right, so add the text of the button clicked to the current result. Right, and now update result text box. How do I do that? So I say result text box dot text is equal to the string current result. Current result's already get the string. It's already got this, and I've added something onto it. Let's see how this works. This is a little algorithm that we're building, right? Little simple algorithm. Now you might sit there and go, "Wow, where is he getting this stuff from?" Right? It's just simple. I've got a string. The text box holds a string. It's a string container. Right? I'm taking the string, I'm reading it, adding to it, putting it back, right? Why can't I just add to the current string? Because it doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work. If I go my text plus equals to whatever, I get some weird results sometimes. So it's always better to take it, manipulate it in a separate object like this, and then add it back in, all right? Besides, also, there's an extra step that I can do other things, like calculate. I haven't done that yet. All right, so let's try this out, this little algorithm, and see if it works. Then we'll take a short break. So if I click on the 8, it adds an 8. 9. Oh, we got some stuff. We have some problems, right? And this doesn't do anything yet. None of these do anything because we haven't enabled any of this stuff. Only the buttons, and I can add as many buttons as I want in there. Huh? How's that, baby? You like them apples? I do, right? This is part 1 of our calculator. Part 2 is I want to go in there and I want to start playing around with this. So the C button, the clear button, is going to clear the text box. That's a whole different event. Can't use the same event. Although, if you really think about it, I can. I just need to use an if statement. If it's the clear button, if the button's equal to the clear button, kill it. I mean, I could use one event for everything, right? Why is it more efficient to use one event than use multiple events before I let you go on break, right? It's more efficient because the more events that I got going on in the wild, right, I've got concurrencies happening. I got things that are happening all the same time. I'm adding them to the event stack, right? And the more events I handle all at the same time in a particular form, the form becomes a little bit less efficient, a little bit less efficient. If I have more of those, if I have like 5, 6 forms like that, all open at the same time, my system kind of bogs down a little bit, right? Now, for an i7 system like this, chances are nothing's going to happen. But you want to be as efficient as you can. And by the way, the same kind of idea that I'm doing here will work in different ways across different kinds of devices. All right, let's stop this now. And when we come back, we'll continue with our calculator example. And I'll upload what I have to GitHub. Let's take a short break.